Hello and welcome. You're watching the newsroom. I'm Kriti Mehta. Now, in this show, we are going to give you a roundup of all the top stories that took place today across the world. But to start with, there is some breaking news now coming in fact, from Israel, where Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has issued a stark warning to Iran. Netanyahu is saying an Iranian attack on Israel will be one mistake too many. That's breaking news details that are coming in. Any attempt by Iran to harm Israel will be met by a determined response. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has issued a stark warning, and he was speaking at the Knesset session honoring Albanian Prime Minister Edi Rama, where he made this statement to say that it will be a very big mistake, one mistake too many. Netanyahu says there will be more normalizations deals, meanwhile, with Arab and Muslim states. Alright, viewers, Israel issuing a stark warning now to Iran for any military aggression, deterring it, saying the mistake will be a big one. And with that, we are now going to move on. Alright, viewers, and let's now move on to the next story. Now, as far as the ceasefire in Gaza is concerned, there's a crucial development that's taken place today. The body of the last remaining captives has now been returned by Hamas to Israel. That's a big development that is coming in today. Israel has retrieved the last hostages' body from Gaza, paving the way for crossing to open. Israel said it would now reopen Rafah crossing once a search is completed, and the return of remains of the last hostage's body is anticipated as a moment of national healing. Now, Hamas is saying the discovery of the remains shows its commitment to end the war. Israel has recovered now the remains of the last remaining hostage held in Gaza. It is confirmed by the Israeli military, and this, of course, is fulfilling a key condition of the initial phase of Donald Trump's plan to end the war in the Palestinian territory. In the latest, the remains of police officer Ranjwili, was held in Gaza for more than 840 days, have been identified and will be returned now for burial. The military has made this statement, and this is, of course, now clearing the way for the second round of a ceasefire to be implemented. The recovery of the remains could pave the way for a limited reopening of the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt, the devastated enclave's main gateway to the outside world, in line with the Israeli pledges. The Palestinian Committee of Technocrats has backed, it's been backed by the US to administer Gaza. It said that the border crossing would open this week, and a government spokesperson has also said that no immediate comment was made when asked about the border crossing and its reopening. Meanwhile, the last remaining hostage and his remains had been held in Gaza since he was killed during Hamas's attack on October 7 in 2023, when the Palestinian militant group led an attack on southern Israeli communities, triggering the 2-year Israeli offensive. Footage aired on Israeli news channels showed dozens of soldiers arm in arm purportedly at the site in Gaza where the body was discovered, singing a Hebrew song expressing Jewish hope and faith. Meanwhile, there are some statements that are coming in. Let's hear.
אני שמח לבשר לאזרחי ישראל, לעם ישראל, כפי שבישרתי עכשיו, משפחת גמילי, כוחותינו מצאו את רני, הוא כרגע בדרך הביתה. זה הישג בלתי רגיל של מדינת ישראל. הבטחנו, אני הבטחנו, להחזיר את כולם, והחזרנו את כולם, עד האחרון שבו. רני, גיבור ישראל, נכנס ראשון, יצא האחרון, שב הביתה.
All right, joining me now in this discussion is my colleague Marsha Barve. Marsha, what more are you picking up and what do we see next as far as the ceasefire in Gaza is concerned, especially after the constitution of the Board of Peace?
Yes, well, Kriti, thank you for having me. Today, which is the 26th of January 2026, marks a rather momentous day for Israel as the remains, as you mentioned, the remains of the last hostage has been returned back to Israel. These remains are of a 24-year-old officer who served for the army, for the Jewish army, has been returned. He also was a police officer. He was, like you mentioned, killed in the October 7, 2023 attack, which was led by Hamas. And finally, his remains have reached back to Israel. The Jewish community, the citizens of Israel, do celebrate the return. This also marks the completion or the final stage of the first phase of the US brokered ceasefire and peace deal between both Israel and Gaza. Now, his remains, that is the remains of the 24-year-old police officer, Ran Givili. His remains were found after an operation by the Israeli military, which included excavating a cemetery in northern Gaza, where intelligence suggested his body was buried. Now, what is the status of this ceasefire? Now, the recovery clears the way for the phase 2 of the US brokered ceasefire agreement to begin with. The ceasefire, which began in October 2025, has been rather fragile, with sporadic clashes but no large-scale combat. Now, the key elements of phase 2, which is of the peace plan, are, like you mentioned, reopening of the Rafah crossing. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that Israel will open the Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. And the second is the technocratic Palestinian government, where under the ceasefire, a technocratic Palestinian government will be formed to manage Gaza's public service and infrastructure. These are humanitarian assistance going into rebuilding of the Gaza Strip. Now, phase 2 is focused on rebuilding Gaza, which has been heavily damaged during the war. The ISF, which is the International Stabilization Force, will be involved in the security and reconstruction efforts. Now, phase 1, we saw hostage and prisoner exchange, where Israel received 20 living hostages and 27 bodies of deceased hostages. Israel also released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners in exchange. Now, for the Israeli hostages remains, for every Israeli hostages remains that were returned, Israel released 15 deceased Palestinian bodies. This does not come just as it is. It comes with a huge humanitarian crisis. The amount of casualties and displacement numbers are in thousands, where the conflict has caused significant destruction, where over 71,000 Palestinians have died and millions have been displaced. Now, the political and diplomatic impact of this instance is rather noteworthy, which follows after Netanyahu's announcement, where Netanyahu hailed the recovery of Givili's remains as a great achievement, in his words, as I quote, and reiterated Israel's commitment to bringing all hostages home. He emphasized that this step allowed the peace process to move forward, particularly by demilitarizing of Gaza. Now, the reactions that have come with this return have also been momentous, where Givili, the last hostage whose remains were returned, his family had previously demanded the Rafah crossing remains closed until their son's body was returned. They are now pressing for further action on the peace plan. The conflict toll has also been huge, where the attack by Hamas killed around 12,000 people in Israel and resulted in the capture of 251 hostages, according to reports. The latest recovery of Gavili's body marks the end of the hostage situation, with all hostages now returned, that is, living and deceased. This has also seen a lot of international involvement. The US's involvement, which was led by President Trump and Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who are the special envoys to the Middle East for the US. So yes, Kriti, this is what we know as of now. This is the end of the first phase. This now, the remains that were returned now are a leeway into the implementation and execution of the second phase of the Gaza peace plan, which was brokered by US President Donald Trump. And yes, we finally see a development and a little bit of a progress into reconstruction of Gaza.
Right,
and
Marisha,
peace.
thanks very much for joining me and for helping us with those latest details coming in. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on. Let's now cover news from the US, particularly from the state of Minnesota, where after Rennie Nicole Good, Alex Preddy was also shot by ICE agents fatally. And post the shootings of these two, Donald Trump is now going to send who he is calling border czar to Minnesota as calls grow for full inquiry into the shootings of Alex Preddy. The US president says his administration is reviewing everything after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy, as one Republican governor has already said enough is enough. In fact, let's bring you more details as far as the border czar that Trump is talking about is concerned. Trump is going to send in the aftermath of the shooting of Alex Preddy, a strongman there in Minnesota, and Trump is in fact sending Tom Homan to Minnesota. This amidst the growing protests after the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy. In fact, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has publicly backed Homan and also said that he will remove violent criminal illegal aliens from Minnesota's streets. Meanwhile, the White House press secretary has said the president has full trust and confidence in Noem, Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary. And in fact, to remind viewers, over the last 24 hours, Trump has shifted his messaging, even as he tries to come to grips with a public mood that is rapidly souring on his immigration policy. Alex Preddy was a 37-year-old US citizen, and he was shot dead on Saturday during an altercation with the Border Patrol, and this is the second Minneapolis killing by federal agents this month. US President has told that his administration is reviewing everything, but adds it doesn't play good when someone goes to a protest with a loaded gun. Several videos are being reviewed as of now, but Preddy is the second such recent fatal shooting by ICE agents in Minneapolis. And amidst this and after all of this, Trump administration is sending border czar Tom Homan to Minnesota even as protests grow. In fact, earlier in the day, some statements have come in. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has spoken. There are also statements of Border Patrol commandants and of the protesters. Let's show you one by one.
Well, my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state? You thought fear, violence, and chaos is what you wanted from us, and you clearly underestimated the people of this state and nation. We are tired, but we're resolved. We're peaceful, but we'll never forget. We're angry, but we won't give up hope. And above all else, we are clearly unified. We believe in law and order in this state. We believe in peace. And we believe that Donald Trump needs to pull these 3,000 untrained agents out of Minnesota before they kill another person. And we're up here telling another story of a Minnesotan just trying to live their life without the interference.
Many videos out there, many different accounts that you may see, that I may see, that anybody here may see. That, folks, is why we have something called an investigation, to take what you're talking about, to take those videos, to take witness statements, to take officer statements, all those minute details that will paint a true picture, not a freeze frame concept, and paint a larger picture of what really happened. That is why we investigate, so we can get to the truth, so there's not speculation. Speculation after 24 hours, you've got a lot of speculation in there. That officer, let's think of what those agents were doing on that scene, making a split-second decision. You've had 24 hours to try and armchair quarterback things. That agent had a split second to make a decision. 2 suspects have been shot, and suspects that assault, delay, obstruct, or threaten a law enforcement officer's life. It goes back to the choices that we just talked about. When individuals make poor choices, poor decisions, come into a law enforcement situation, an active law enforcement situation, conspire to come into that situation. Whether that's based on ideology, we don't know. That'll be in the investigation that we just talked about. That's what we base the split-second decisions on.
Well, I live in northern Minnesota, and we started having ICE people come up there, and they're coming into our restaurants, and they're going to people's homes, and they're taking people. We can't live like this. This is America. We're supposed to be free, and they're trying to take that away. In the 60s, I protested against the Vietnam War, and it helped. And I just thought, well, maybe I can do some good this time too.
I don't believe that anyone is not allowed to be here, and I think the way that the government is bringing ICE in to take away our neighbors and to pull families apart is completely inhumane. And if we don't speak out for them, then other people won't. So we're here to strike for our community. I think it was completely senseless. It was murder. He was not threatening. He was not attacking ICE. And I think the government is lying about what they're doing to cover up how what they're doing is illegal. And I think Alex does not deserve that. Neither did Renee, neither did any of the people that have been murdered.
All right, I now invite my colleague Marisha to join us back in the discussion here. Marisha, to talk to us about who this Tom Homan is that Trump is calling the border czar and intends to send to Minnesota after public outcry against ICE agents.
Yes, well, Kriti, a lot of unrest and aggression is being witnessed in the US, and focus being on Minneapolis and Minnesota at the moment. Now, the latest development with regards to why this unrest and why this aggression is just being aggravated is the shooting of a 37-year-old man, namely Alex Jeffrey Pretty. Now, he was fatally shot by a federal border patrol officer in Minneapolis on the 24th of January of this year. Now, Pretty, who was an ICU nurse and a citizen of US, was shot. Although he was unharmed, he was in fact holding a phone and not a gun during the confrontation. Now, to counter this, the federal agents initially claimed that Pretty had a weapon and was resisting an arrest, but the video footage contradicts this claim, showing that he was holding a phone. Now, seeing the optics of it has caused protesters not only in the US, not only in Minnesota, but all over US to protest and stand against the whole deployment of federal agents in Minnesota. Now, getting back to the claims of the federal office is that the US President Donald Trump and federal officials portrayed Pretty as a threat, claiming that he intended to attack federal agent and labeled him as a domestic terrorist. These are statements given by the government. Now, the department, like you mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security claimed that the agent acted in self-defense, asserting Pretty had a handgun and resisted their attempt to disarm him. But this is being contradicted by the evidence that was later found, where video evidence analyzed that by the New York Times and other reports showed that Pretty was holding a phone and not a gun during the encounter. Now, let me circle back to the protests and the civil unrest. The shooting has led to a widespread of protests in Minneapolis. Demonstrators have clashed with federal agents demanding accountability and calling for withdrawal of federal forces from the city. At least 1,000 people attended the vigil that was held for Pretty. Even in this winter, in this harsh winter that US is facing. Now, the response of it has been rather noteworthy, where protests have continued across. But the background of this is that the US government has increased its immigration enforcement efforts by deploying thousands of federal agents to the city under the Trump's administration, Operation Metro Surge, to target illegal immigrants. The operation has sparked protests, especially after yet another deadly shooting of a US citizen, Renee Good, by the ICE agent back on 7th of January of this year. There is a political and legal fallout. Like you mentioned, Minnesota's Attorney General has filed a lawsuit against the federal government to prevent the destruction of evidence related to the shooting. Now, nationally, the debate is ongoing over the balance between immigration enforcement and civil rights, where many are criticizing the tactics of the federal agents. Now, tensions have deepened. So yes, Priti, this is what we know about the unrest and aggravated aggression within Minneapolis, Minnesota, and with more of these unrests, there's a grim reality that's being portrayed out of the US.
Marisha, thanks very much then for filling us in with all the latest. And with that, viewers, before we wrap up the bulletin, let's also bring you the latest on the Russia-Ukraine peace dialogue. You know that trilateral talks between US, Russia and Ukraine are being held in Abu Dhabi. And as far as the latest developments go, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that US has assured 100% security guarantees to the war-torn nation. But in the latest, we're also picking up that Russian strikes continue, and the strikes have left at least 1,330 buildings without heat. Russia has launched a vast attack on Ukraine's energy system, rocking Kyiv with explosions and leaving 1.2 million properties without power nationwide during sub-zero winter temperatures. But Kyiv is assured 100% security guarantees in a documented manner from the United States, and that's the statement that has come out from Zelensky himself. Kyiv is waiting for a time and place for the document, however, to be signed. The European Union countries have also given final approval to ban Russian gas in another major update. Meanwhile, there is a statement that's coming in. Let's hear that.
Для нас гарантії безпеки, передусім, це двосторонні гарантії безпеки з Сполученими Штатами Америки. Документ готовий на 100%. Ми очікуємо від партнерів готовності дати і місця, коли ми його підпишемо. А потім документ буде йти в ратифікацію в Конгрес Сполучених Штатів Америки і в український парламент, згідно наших домовленостей. Другі гарантії безпеки для України – це європейські гарантії безпеки, це коаліція охочих і найголовніше – членство в європейській.
Es ist gut und wichtig, dass Präsident Trump es sich zum Ziel gemacht hat, das Sterben in der Ukraine zu beenden. Das Treffen in Alaska hat verdeutlicht, für einen gerechten und dauerhaften Frieden muss Moskau sich endlich bewegen. Bis das nicht passiert, muss der Druck auf Russland erhöht werden, auch mit verstärkten Ukraine-Hilfen. Dass auch Japan die Ukraine bislang mit $12 Milliarden unterstützt hat, und Sanktionen gegen Russland durchsetzt. Dafür bin ich sehr dankbar.
Das erste Gipfeltreffen war eine sehr direkte Reaktion auf Russlands schrecklichen Angriffskrieg auf die Ukraine und die daraus entstandene Energiekrise. Der Gipfel hat damals ein wichtiges Signal gesendet. Wir als Nordseeländer stärken unsere Zusammenarbeit, um die Nordsee zu einem Kraftwerk in Europa zu machen. Und damit steht der Gipfel für unsere Unabhängigkeit, die wir gemeinsam stärken wollen.
All right, viewers, that's all we have time for. Thanks for watching the newsroom on the NewsX World.